Welcome back to part 2 of OMG Fashun, Friends They Never Knew They Needed. In part 1, co-executive producer Rich Brusa and producer Mary Guevara-Prete gave us an exclusive peek into the genesis and workings of the show. Then, several of the contestants, Disruptors, shared personal stories of their paths to the show and how it changed their lives. Join us now as we meet more of the participants and hear their special and unique stories. Jarrod Olson grew up in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. In fact, he was just a few towns over from Bree Billiter, but they never met until they were both on the show. A graduate of FIT, his brand Billy's is futuristic meets vintage and is inspired by driving his parents' classic cars. Justin Bieber and Lenny Kravitz have worn Billy's, and as Jarrod explains, this brand reflects his life, from the hard to the best times. The number 11 plays a big role in his life, too.
I was born in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and a lot of my inspiration came from my childhood. I would say that it came from my dad owns a heating and air conditioning company, and he started me young, as in like working, and he taught me how to pattern make sheet metal fittings that go in people's homes. And but from there, I was always interested in fashion, and so I started clothing I started a handful of clothing brands in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like more like streetwear and very like surf like, and it was just more or less of me putting myself out there and getting a feeler for like getting comfortable with expressing myself creatively. And then from there, after I graduated high school, I moved to New York City, attended FIT, where I studied fashion business, and I took a couple design courses at night, and that's when I learned how to sew.
Jarrod has admittedly had several influencers who got him to where he is today. And as for how he landed on OMG Fashun, well, there was one more person that made the difference for him.
Definitely, I would say Rick Owens, Margiela. I guess these are designers though that are influencing my style.
Mm-hmm.
My close friends, I think we all influence each other, and then like random strangers on the street. His name is Marcellus or Marcello.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Marcello, if I'm messing your name up. But
No hard feelings, Marcello.
Yeah, no, he scouted me on Instagram, and then we just had a conversation, and he was like, I think you'd be a really good fit for this. You should apply. I was like, all right. And I just went through the process, and that whole entire experience from top to bottom was like, it was just so awesome. Down from even like the interviewing process was very very smooth, thorough, and then when I got there, like it was just sick.
Jarrod's creativity earned him a spot on the final episode, but the road there was not without its challenges for sure. And these challenges, in fact, the whole experience, helped him grow.
I would say that like the time crunch, there was is very limited on time in terms of making like an outfit. We only had 8 hours, but within those 8 hours, it was you're being filmed. It's not all just working throughout those 8 hours. There are like interactions of like of things going on. But I would say yeah, that was the biggest challenge is the time frame.
Probably the fastest 8 hours of your life.
Yeah, time flew by. It definitely made me reflect on myself in terms of uh, I think that I've been making clothes for about 13 years, and I've been sewing and patterning clothes for probably about like nine, yeah, 9 or so of those years. And I haven't gotten to the point of where one would consider like we're all like successful designers on the show, but we're all at a certain point where we're competing on a design show, so we're not at the level of like an actual like design house. And I don't know. I think that I've often seeked for outside validation, And this show helped me realize that I don't need to seek for that because
Mm-hmm.
like my validation, my flowers, the like the career of a successful designer, all these things will come and so on. But I
Mm-hmm.
don't need outside validation for that. And I think the show helped me realize that.
And Jarrod definitely has a powerful and vivid dream.
To have a fashion house, have an estate,
Mm-hmm.
um, where the Billy's team is a couture house where we create Billy's couture,
Mm-hmm.
and it's also like our headquarters where I would have a separate like almost like farm like stable building where
Mm-hmm.
manufacturing and production is, and have everything on one compound. Really moving forward, it's just I'm working on like a drop basis, so I'm gonna work towards dropping collections consistently and working on with more celebrity clients and just really working on building my audience, like my core audience, through visuals and just connecting genuinely, like connecting with people. So that's what I'm working on.
Having grown up in Bath, UK, Natashia Lunt knew from the moment her mom made her a princess dress for her birthday that she wanted to be a fashion creator. In fact, her focus narrowed even more as she adopted her mom's resourcefulness in using old items to create new magic. So much so that Vogue has taken notice. Let's meet Natasha, the winner of episode 4, and learn who she is and what she means by a circular fashion model.
So I've always wanted to do fashion. My mum was an artist and my dad was a t-shirt printer when I was a child. And so I was already around, a lot of really creative people and entrepreneurial people. And so I always knew that I wanted to do something creative as my career. And I always wanted to be my own boss eventually. And so I think my first time when I first learned to sew was when I was a kid. Like I would make dresses for my dolls.
Mm-hmm.
My mum being an artist and my dad having a startup, neither of them had very much money and they were both very young as well. So they were really starting out in their careers. And so I had to be really resourceful, with the stuff that I had. And so I would make my doll clothes and I really loved doing it. And then my grandmother would sew, cushions and home furnishings and curtains and little purses and small little accessories. And so she taught me how to hand sew. And so that's kind of when I started my fashion adventure, I guess, or my, my passion for fashion.
Sure.
And then as I got older, my grandmother noticed, that I had a really keen interest in fashion, and so she purchased Vogue yearly subscription for me for my Christmas present. And then every year she would renew it, and that would be my Christmas present. So every month I would get one of these Vogue magazines, and I would just like flip through every page and spend like ages just examining each page and, putting post-its on it and doing sketches in my sketchbook. And then at the end of it, and at the end of the month, I would then put it in plastic and store it. My first job was when I was 17. And so I've actually been working in fashion for just over 20 years. My first part of my career was in London, where I'm from and where I was born. And then when I was 24, I actually got relocated to Hong Kong in China.
Oh my.
Yeah, which was amazing. I'd never been to Hong Kong before. I definitely didn't speak Mandarin or Cantonese.
Was that with Guess Jeans?
Yes, that was good Guess Jeans. So they actually scouted me. I was selling some products in this like local market called Brick Lane Market. It's really, really famous. There's a lot of like independent brands that have little stalls. Anyway, one of the designers there found me there while they were on a trip. and they were like, we're looking to fill this position. Would you be interested? And I was like, yes. And they were like, okay, we're going to interview you. And then they hired me and relocated me to Hong Kong, which was an amazing opportunity. And I had the best time.
Who've been some of your biggest influences in the fashion industry?
So for me, my idols, my design idols, would be Vivian Westwood and Alexander McQueen.
And as for her entree into OMG Fashun,
when I saw that this show was when I spoke to the casting directors, I was just like, I really want to be on this show. Like, I'd applied to other shows in previous years, and I hadn't got into the final. I got callback, but I just didn't make the final cut. And so it's been a goal of mine for a while, to like get on these TV shows, like a fashion competition. One, because I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. Two, like I really wanted like the challenge, and also like three, like the exposure, for my brand, being an independent designer.
There were extreme highs and notable challenges along the way for her.
Yeah, no, that was definitely my most memorable moment, winning. Obviously I didn't know I was going to win. It was like on stage, and then they were like, the winner is, and like, but honestly, the whole experience like was like once in a lifetime experience. Like the crew were amazing. Obviously the talent like Julia Fox, Bill Roach and Tommy Dorfman, who was the guest judge on my episode, were all just so amazing. Like they were so lovely. They were like the energy, like everyone was so positive. And then also the fellow contestants that I was on my episode with were amazing too. And we really bonded because it was such a high pressure situation, and like I'm sure in other scenarios, we could have been like enemies because we're competing against each other. But actually there was like this really amazing like camaraderie, which was like made the whole experience 100 times better, because there's so much pressure to have that kind of feeling of like, support and like an understanding and with the other people was amazing. So I think the whole experience really was the most memorable thing. And honestly, it blew by so fast. It was like so fast. I think the pressure was probably the hardest thing, but because I'd been practicing, that kind of pressure, from working with the celebrity clients, like I was able to like manage my stress pretty well. So, and like I mentioned, that having the support of the other contestants kind of took the pressure off because we were all in it together, and I just kept telling myself, regardless of the outcome, like you wanted to be on a show, you got on the show, like you're a winner already.
As this accomplished disruptor readies for what's next, what's her dream?
Oh, my dream is to be an internationally recognized designer. So I would like to have people around the world know my name and know my designs. And I would love to be in stores globally. I would really love that. And I'd also like to work on a feature film.
Another one of the disruptors who grew up in LA and moved to New York to pursue his fashion dream is Theo Banzon. The winner of episode 4, Theo grew up being larger in stature than other kids and had a hard time finding cool clothes to fit him. His solution? To make his own. He aspires to make sustainable clothing wasting nothing and exemplifies this in his brand, Abad.
I was born and raised in LA, California by my parents, who were both of Filipino descent or raised in the Philippines. And in that way, Filipinos are very much makers. Like, I think I was just there recently, and I realized that everybody there makes everything. So it's almost not unique that I do what I do. Like, everyone that like is just, oh, they're proud that you make something, but everybody makes something there. So with that, I feel like I grew up making everything myself. And it was always such a funny thing that people were like, oh, you made that shirt or you made those pajamas. And I was just like, well, yeah, I mean, somebody has to make something somewhere, like there's not like now there are robots that make things, but there's still no full making of clothes without somebody sewing it. So I'm just very aware of that in Filipino culture. So I feel like my grandma sewing and my mom sewing just brought me up in sewing culture.
It also made him a perfect candidate for OMG Fashion.
It was all about timing. I had just left my corporate job at the time, and behind the scenes of my 9 to 5, I'd always been sewing and making things for my friends or models I work with. And that way, my friends are plus size, and my friends are the other in the fashion world. So it came naturally that I was making for, not the typical model body type. Applying for the show and winning, I think that's every time I have a imposter moment. I think, well, somebody on the show picked you, and you're doing the right thing right now.
And how about the most memorable times?
It's so funny. I think so many of the memories keep flooding back each time I watch an episode or I talk to one of my showmates, but it all went by so quickly. I think I keep saying I treated it like an art retreat where I was like, somebody's giving you time and space to create something of your dreams. So just take that chance. And I feel like I really, I think that's why I succeeded, because I think I kept thinking to myself, don't stress yourself about the competition. Just think this is a chance to make art and let people see what you like, and there's no pressure. It was really like an art vacation. So I think the stress was, I think maybe anytime I considered having to win. I mean, I want to say that before each judging, I wasn't necessarily thinking like you have to win, but it was like it would be nice. You worked hard, you put your heart out there, but there wasn't this same stress that I think you would expect maybe. Because again, me and my contestants are so close. We were such great friends, and it was just nice to meet people who are more on your side of creativeness than others. So it felt, again, just like summer camp or hanging out with some friends in a living room and making stuff together.
And what's next for Theo? Well, besides his goal to pursue fashion and pay his mom back for all of her sacrifices.
Ooh, a lot.
You were talking about some of the things in the fashion industry that are scary and dangerous. As consumers of fashion, what should we know and how can we make a difference?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I think the easiest thing is watch the show and get some inspiration. And, I dream of this big movement that the industry will not produce new items for a whole year. Or maybe from that, something of we shouldn't buy new things for a year, because you can make something from what you have at home. I'm doing the same thing right now, where after being on a show, me and my contestants, Chelsea, actually, we talked about this all the time. When you go out shopping and you see things that aren't inspiring or something that you can make yourself, it feels so much cooler if you go home and make it yourself. So I think by watching the show and seeing Julia, you realize that fashion doesn't have to be bought. You can make your fashion. So you can have a great time with your friends, go get a pair of jeans, go get a hoodie, upcycle it. And, it may not be the coolest thing the first time around, but even if it's not, you making it will make you feel so much better about it. It's good for you. It's good for the planet. So many good things about upcycling. So I think we need to upcycle in the fashion industry for sure.
In addition to the relationships he formed, Theo was part of a special group called the Disruptor 6.
Yeah, it's so funny. They put us up in the same hotel, and we fully expected to never see each other. But in a small hotel and very distinct looking people, we all saw each other at the coffee bar or, at dinner time in the one restaurant. So eventually, me and the episode before us, 105 and 106, we were recording at the exact same time. So we'd even shuttle to the studio together. But, we got really close, and we keep saying to us, it's so funny because I think Desiree knew of Chelsea before. I knew of Brad, and I knew of Katya. So we all knew of each other. But finally meeting people who you know of and realizing you're more friends than enemies, I guess, which is so nice. Like we bonded on so many things that, like, small brands like us, you assume have maybe at least one other employee. But for most of us, it's still just one person shipping, sewing, producing content, all the things that we do. So it's just nice to almost feel like a 6-person team now, when before we were all alone. So the Disruptor 6 is a new, just besties way of hanging out and keeping in touch.
Our final guest is, in fact, another member of the Disruptor 6, but from a different episode than Theo. Chelsea Billingsley grew up and still lives in Chicago. The winner of episode 5, her brand house of Chelsea B, landed a collab with Nike and Air Force One. Her fashion designs are notable, and so are her crochet creations. Chelsea, who calls herself an artist who fell into fashion, paints, builds, does interior design and hair, and ultimately strives to be a vibe, not a trend?
Well, number one, I'm an artist that fell into fashion. So like I grew up painting and drawing and watching all of the interior design things. And so shout out to my mom and like my grandparents for really like tapping into the fact that I love creativity and I love art. So they kind of just let me explore. I ended up just on like Saturdays, I would go with my grandmother to the thrift shops and things like that. And we wasn't afforded with a lot of money to be able to buy all of like the new clothes and such. So that kind of led me into upcycling a lot of my clothing. And also going to elementary school and middle school, we had to wear a lot of uniforms. I wore uniforms all the way up to high school. And so that also just added to the fact that like I needed to, it just made me want to make all of my clothes unique and just discover myself through that. When I had to go to church or maybe like a friend's birthday party, that was like my moment to express myself in clothing. And so, yeah, from there, when I was in high school, one of my homeroom teachers actually decided to teach all of the girls in my class how to crochet, and I just somehow fell in love with it, it just felt like the puzzle pieces clicked, and that's where like the concept of let me see if I can crochet a skirt or a dress or hats for my dogs. You know, my dogs were like my first models, but that was
perfect.
Literally, they probably were so annoyed with the fact that I was just making them random hats, but hey, it worked out because here we are now. But that was literally how it started. I mean, I had sewing machines, but I mean, sure, I learned how to sew. I ended up really learning how to drape strap, do the proper sewing things when I got to scab. But like when the puzzle pieces started to click, that like I can turn these fibers or yarn into clothing was back when I was like a sophomore year in high school and really playing around with my dogs and making stuff for them.
And the stuff she creates has certainly gained notice. Who's influenced her work?
You have Teyana Taylor, Taoray Wang, also Jerry Lorenzo. Virgil is in the top 5. Virgil Abloh is in the top 5. Unif Ambush. Again, it goes into some musical influences. So you have some like the Toby Nwigwe's and Kendrick Lamar. And the reason why, I know it's kind of like a broad inspo, but they all just, it's really the storytelling and how, I don't want to say transparent they are, but how true to themselves they are, whether that's in music or how they dress. And so that's something that I always wanted to, or want to continue to showcase to my audience or to the people who are inspired by me.
There were a lot of moments that stood out, but the most memorable?
I think some of my most memorable moments was time in the studio with my castmates. Just getting to know them. Like I remember when I met Brad, and I'm like, whoa, he is so interesting and cool. But I remember when we got our first critique, and I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know. I don't even know. Like, I feel like imposter syndrome was trying to set in a little bit, but that's about good. And then I remember, and this is probably the most smallest thing, but I remember when we were getting the models, like in those final moments when we were getting the models dressed, and the most out of the norm thing that could happen, like the earring back to the earrings that I was creating, it just kept falling off. And I was like, it was so stupid, but it made me like slow down a little bit. And I'm like, maybe that was God or the person, whatever, try to just give me a slow down and be like, everything's gonna be fine. You made it to this moment. Like, just go in there and give it your best. So that was like one of the most memorable moments. And then obviously reading law and finding out that wisdom was the guest judge.
How about the biggest challenge?
After the first critique, like I thought I was going into the first critique like it was gonna be good. I was just gonna showcase my personal style. Everything was gonna be okay. But then when we got our first critique in Law and Julia, they were kind of pretty much disappointed. And obviously, Law being from Chicago, I wanted to make sure that I put my best foot forward, or like I had his blessing. In that moment when I got my critique, that kind of took a strike at my ego a little bit because I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And one of the things that really kept me going was what Julia said. You know, kind of trust your gut and like do what it is that you do. And so I just went for it. And so that's how I got over it. I was just like, okay, let's quiet the nerves and let me trust my gut. And so I kid you not, when I the first 4 hours of the challenge, I had a completely different look than what went down the runway. So I literally scrapped what I had made within the first, yes, I literally scrapped what I had made in that first 4 hours, like right when we had only like 4 hours left.
And what about that special bond with Theo and the other members of the Disruptor 6?
Man, oh my gosh, it's crazy because I think that we all, like, I don't think that we expected to click with each other that fast. But like, we literally text probably every week, probably 3-4 times a week. We text, we're in a group chat. But I feel as though they all became friends that I didn't know that I needed, especially like being in this industry. It could be very like cutthroat. You can, like, sometimes people try to pit, other designers against each other. But no matter, like, even though it was a competition, we genuinely were like rooting for each other, and like we still root for each other today. I think Desiree from like one of the other episodes, she's doing her first fashion show during New York Fashion Week, so we're all planning to like go down there and visit her and like support her through that process. Anytime we need advice on something going on in the industry, we're just always there for each other. So I just think that I don't even know if E or OMG Fashun was ready or like prepared for the friendship that came out of that, but I think it was a blessing in disguise. And I'm super proud of Theo, Brad, Des, Randy, Katia, like we all, it's great.
Now, you talked about learning to trust your gut. In what ways do you think participating in OMG Fashun helped you grow as a designer?
You know what? I would say the way I felt that I grew as a designer on the show was, again, just trusting myself, and trusting that if I'm in the room, then that means that I was supposed to be there, whether I win, lose, quote unquote fail. I just think that it all became a learning experience. I've worked under pressure a lot of times, in terms of working in this industry, working with celebrities, things like that. But this was just like a totally different atmosphere that I had to adapt to. And so it really was just helping me get over like my fear, especially within this world of like social media and things like that. You can fall into this trap of trying to compare yourself to somebody else's creative process and somebody else's designs, like but being on a show helped me to trust myself, and I'm happy to say that like once I left, I felt more empowered and confident to just be me, and just continue to show the world what I got. So that's what I would say, and I'm super grateful for the experience overall.
And at the end of it all, what advice would Chelsea give to those wanting to follow in her footsteps?
Honestly, I would say just give yourself grace. At the end of the day, say you get on the show, honestly, it goes back to like trusting that you are in the place that you're supposed to be, and also be present. A lot of times when we're doing all of these great things and we're just in so much of like a work mode, we forget to remember the journey of like how we got there, and we forget like to give ourselves, to affirm ourselves in those moments. But I just will always say, like, be present, be proud of yourself, and just continue to like affirm yourself and be present.
OMG Fashun didn't just showcase designers. It unleashed a force of creative disruptors from every walk of life and corner of the country. These trailblazers came together to create, bond, and evolve in ways they never imagined. Thanks to the fearless vision and relentless drive of Julia Fox, OMG Fashun gave these creators a platform to chase dreams they didn't even know they had and forge friendships they never even knew they needed. What's next for these disruptors? Who knows? But you can bet we'll be watching closely here at So and So. A heartfelt thank you to everyone who shared their time and stories to make this episode possible, especially Scout Productions and Bernina. Be sure to subscribe to, rate, and review this podcast on your favorite platform, And visit our website, soandsopodcast.com, for more information about today's and all of our guests. That's SEWANDSO podcast.com. I'm Meg Goodman, and I look forward to you joining us next time on So and So.